Ever since I was really young, I've always been enamored with the idea of having a game room. The idea of having all of my favorite consoles and all of my favorite games that all of my friends can enjoy in one space. It seems awesome. But currently, I don't have any games. This is the amalgamation of about 10 years worth of collecting. It doesn't look like a lot right now, but trust me, it is a lot of stuff. I've recently gone through a move, and I thought it would be really fun and sentimental to go through all of my things and highlight some of my favorite items in my collection for one reason or another. I think I have about 15 boxes just worth of stuff, so this is gonna take me a while, but I hope you enjoy. This is probably my weakest shelf. The first three Nintendo consoles aren't exactly my favorite to play, especially on native hardware. Especially the NES, which ironically I own the most of on this shelf. I don't really touch these much because the hardware is just so finicky and unreliable, but for some reason I still want to own them. I don't really know why. I think they just look really nice on the shelf, and these are iconic pieces of gaming history. Although I do have pretty much most of what I want for the NES, I would like to finish the Mega Man set, get Kid Icarus, Dragon Warrior. These are all games I can play on next-gen hardware, so it's not like I'm foaming at the mouth to go buy them right now. This, in my opinion, is probably the coolest thing I own on the NES. It's a reproduction cart of the first Mother game, and it's just really neat to be able to play this on native hardware. My SNES collection is pretty much exactly where I want it to be, outside of like the really expensive JRPGs like Earthbound and Chrono Trigger. Outside of that though, I'm really happy with this. The only thing I'm not exactly happy with is this thing right here. I bought this quite literally at the worst possible time. I bought it of May of 2023, and not even a month later they announced a remake was coming out for Switch, and this game has tanked in price. It is not even half of what I paid for it. Moral of the story, sometimes it's best to just wait it out. For a console that has some of my favorite games of all time, I sure don't have a lot of them. I'm gonna be real, this is probably my least favorite Nintendo console of all time, but I would like to get most of the heavy hitters like all of the Mario Parties, DK64, and a bunch of other games. I pretty much only have the games that I'm pretty much guaranteed to revisit every single year. So technically, out of any of the games I collect for, the N64 has the highest quality to game ratio. Pokemon is easily my biggest vice. I try really hard every year not to buy like a booster box or anything, but there's always this 3-week period where I hyperfix on Pokemon, and I go overboard. I have everything from vintage cards, modern sets, and right now I'm trying to complete the Diamond and Pearl base set. These are ironically all of the books I own for a room full of bookcases, but hey, read Berserk. This is my favorite shelf. I love the GameCube, but I'm sure I didn't have to tell you that. Building my GameCube collection is some of the most fun I've had during my entire time in the hobby. I got so lucky on so many of these games, like the Pokemon games. I got both of these for under $60 in the year 2020, and if you know anything about these games, I practically stole them. Paying $50 for XD Gale of Darkness even in 2020 is wild. I got the Mario parties all together for about 120 bucks. I had to drive 2 hours one way, but man was it worth it. I guess I spent only $47 on my copy of Twilight Princess, which also don't know how I got away with. But the coolest thing, probably in my entire collection to be honest, is this GameCube right here. These are really uncommon even online. They usually go from $400 to $500 if not more, and I got mine for $10 at a flea market when I first moved to Massachusetts. It's one of my favorite memories of collecting. The Wii collection has been like this for a couple years now, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with it. I have pretty much every game I want for the system. I got some funny shovelware games. I can't really ask for much more than that. Sin and Punishment and Fire Emblem are two games I'm always looking for, but you know, if I don't find them in the next couple years and the Wii stuff doesn't change at all, I'm also pretty okay with that. The Wii U has been one of the most active consoles I've been hunting for because the eShop just closed down, and I have a gut feeling that this stuff is just going to get more and more expensive for some reason. But also like the Wii, I'm in a similar place where I pretty much have almost everything I want for the system. Bayonetta 2, Zombie U, and Game & Warrior are definitely games I have on my want list, and hopefully I can start finding some of those soon. The Switch was the first Nintendo console I was able to actively keep up with new releases, and I think it shows. I have pretty much every major release outside of, ironically, the Zelda games. These are two games that I had to play as soon as I could, so I bought them digitally. I regret it a little bit, but you know what? It is what it is. Honestly, I think this is one of Nintendo's best consoles ever. It's probably top 2 for me. It's got the best Pikmin game, the best Zelda game, a good Mario Party, amazing Mario game. There's just so much to love on this console, and it feels like there's something for everyone. My favorite handheld. This was my very first console that I had all to myself, and it was specifically this color right here. I have so many great memories with the DS. Every time I look at my collection, I just get flooded with childhood memories. My first Pokemon game, my first Mario Kart, my first Mario Party. I love it all. My biggest flex is probably owning all of these. I love Pokemon on the DS. It's easily my favorite of the generations. It costs me an arm and a leg, which doesn't feel good, but you know, I play these games every single year without fail, so I feel like I'm getting my money's worth. You might have noticed, but down here in the corner is my entire Game Boy collection. I don't like the system. This is my least favorite handheld of Nintendo's. It's not very fun to play today. There's much better ways to play the games than on native hardware. But you know what? I do want a couple games. Like, I'd like to finish the Pokemon games, obviously, but it's hard to justify buying these games when they don't come with a case and they just sit there in the corner, like there. The 3DS is such a mixed bag for me. It has one of the best remakes of all time, Ocarina of Time 3D, but also one of the worst Nintendo remakes of all time, in Majora's Mask 3D. Pokemon was kinda mid on this console. Kid Icarus and all the revivals they did were awesome, not to mention the greatest Animal Crossing of all time. I like this console, but it's also one I don't really revisit that much. I have pretty much everything I want outside of the Pokemon games, but I don't know, it's in a weird spot for me. Same goes for the Game Boy Advance. This system just does not click with me. Of course I love the Pokemon games, but outside of that and the Metroid games, it doesn't really have its own identity. No new Mario game, one new Zelda game, the Minish Cap, great game. It just feels like something was missing with this system. It had a really short life, but I don't know. One of my favorite things I actually own on this system is a reproduction card of Mother 3. You should play Mother 3 if you haven't. It's a great game. I didn't really get into collecting PlayStation stuff until the pandemic. I bought a PS4 to play Final Fantasy VII Remake when that came out, and I kinda spiraled from there. The PS1 is purely a Final Fantasy machine for me right now. The only games that I don't own that aren't Final Fantasy are Spyro the Dragon and Street Fighter Alpha 3. No idea how I got Street Fighter Alpha 3. I found more copies of Final Fantasy IX than I've ever found of any of the Crash Bandicoot games, which I think is wild. You can also see at the very end my PSP collection, if you can even call it that. That's a system I would love to get into one day, but that also doesn't feel like it has that many compelling games, at least at what I've looked at. The PS2 really does have the best games. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, the Devil May Cry trilogy, Kingdom Hearts. I built pretty much all of this during the pandemic, and it was so much fun. And the best part about it, I don't think I spent more than $35 on a singular item in all of this. Everything I got was around 10 to 15 bucks, and the only thing I spent even close to $35 on was the Metal Gear Solid trilogy, which is well worth the money. The fun to price ratio on this console is just unreal. If you're ever wondering like what system should I start for and you have any interest in PlayStation games, it should be the PS2. The PS3 is a weird console for me because most of the games you would want to buy for PS3 have already been remastered or ported to like the next generation, so there's not really a point in buying it. The only games I really want to play on the PS3 are the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy and Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3. And of course MGS4. This is just one of those consoles that feels kind of redundant now, but you know, I still buy games for it. This is my third copy of Kingdom Hearts 2. I got in at the PS4 at a really late time. Like, I bought my PS4 for the first time much later than most people did. But the bright side of that is I got everything for really cheap. I bought like maybe 2 games at full price because pretty much everything was discounted by this point. And I got to enjoy games like God of War, Ratchet and Clank, all for like 20 bucks or less. And it made it really fun and really addicting to just grab a bunch of games because they were cheap. But I ended up buying some really weird stuff, like why did I buy Call of Duty World War II? And why did I buy NBA 2K20? I've never played these games. Every time I look at my PS5 games, I can't help but feel a sense of resentment because it's such a useless console. This is hands down the worst Sony console, which is really weird to say. It's not a bad console. I mean, it's a great console. It runs everything really well. Where are the games? You get pretty much the same PS5 experience with a PS4 Pro, and I just don't understand why. I can understand both sides of the hill, like you don't want to buy a new console and it's nice to be able to play these games on your already owned machine, but please give me some incentive other than Spider-Man 2. Being completely honest though, if I didn't buy a PS5 up until now, I would have bought one for Rebirth, so who am I kidding? Amiibos are an even bigger vice for me than Pokemon cards are. I can't help but love these things. I spent a long time trying to complete my Zelda set, and I think it was well worth the wait. I think almost all of the Zelda Amiibo look great, outside of this dork. They also have some of my favorite functionality of any Amiibo. Unlocking classic gear in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is more than enough to sell me on these. One day, I want to own all the Smash figures, but I know I'm not even close. My Smash Amiibo collection has fluctuated a lot over the years, and although I don't have a ton right now, these are some of my absolute favorites. I like Mario, sue me. Honestly, this shelf is just an excuse to show off this Mario Galaxy 2 figure. I love this thing so much. It's not the highest quality thing or the rarest, but Galaxy was one of my first Wii games and it reminds me of why I love this franchise so much. This box copy of Super Mario 64 was something my mom found for me on her vacation, and I just love the way it looks. This shelf is not only my excuse to show off my Majora's Mask, but also my Majora's Mask Collector's Edition. These were Christmas gifts to myself years ago, and these were worth every single penny. Majora's Mask might be my favorite video game of all time. Ocarina of Time is here too. I'm hoping to replace this someday with a collector's edition and a nicer box, but for now, this is more than good enough. I love Ampharos, it's easily one of my favorite Pokemon. I think it would be awesome to own all of the cards for the line one day, but obviously I'm still pretty far away. These are all of my handhelds, and oh my gosh, so many of these are DS's. The original DS has a special place in my heart for nostalgia reasons. It sucks and it's easily the worst way to play DS games nowadays, but it feels so good in the hands, and the GBA port fits smooth at the bottom. The DSi XL has been my newest hyperfixation. These are easily the best way to enjoy DS games, even better than the 3DS line, and they look and feel amazing. I honestly love these things so much, I might try and complete a full set of all the colors, but we'll see. These two bottom shelves are just little knickknacks and collectibles I've gotten over the years that I don't really have a specific place for, outside of this guy right here. This was a gift from my best friends, and it's the alt I play in Super Smash Bros. With the otter emoji on its head, and I think it's a great analogy for this entire room. Although it may not be as obvious as this guy, everything in this room has a story I can tell you about a memory I have of it, and it's almost like a timeline of my life. The trips to flea market with my mom, the Easter I broke my DS trying to beat story mode with every single character, and the hundreds and thousands of hours I spent traveling and playing this game with my friends. Everything here has a ton of sentimental value to me, and it's why I love collecting so much in the first place. Thank you for joining me on this trip down memory lane, and I hope you have a good one.